Welcome in to the Unblocked podcast, part of the Unblocked Podcast Network. I'm Keith here with Coach and Brian, and our special guest today, the one and only Jim Cox. He's going to have a great conversation with Coach here. Should be a lot of fun. I look forward to that. As always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, interact with us on all the social media networks, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. Hit us up individually at our Unblocked podcast Twitter feed. We're always looking to interact with you. Ask us some questions. We can get your questions part of the show and get them answered. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Run and Try on Hillcrest. Go see my guy Aaron. He'll get you all set up. It's getting to be the wintertime. Ground's a little harder. Cold weather gear, he's got it all. Go see him and he'll get you taken care of. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. Coach, Jim, take it away.
Appreciate it, Keith. Jim, appreciate you coming on with us tonight. For our viewers, Jim Cox, entrepreneur, Southern Napa wine store in Daphne, sports enthusiast, UTV 44 game of the week, broadcaster for, was this 25 years this year that y'all?
24. Yeah, we hadn't. Yeah, and I think we made it through without getting fired. So maybe 25 will come up in August of next year.
Very good. Chicagoan, Chicago Bears fan, Chicago sports fan. Let's just start out. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up in the Mobile area, in the Mobile market, and how all that came about.
Yeah, so I ended up I got to Mobile in 1997. The way most people from the Midwest, come down to the South and end up in Mobile, Alabama. I was just like everybody else. It was hockey that brought me here. Hockey. So it was play-by-play guy for the minor league hockey team up here in a place called the Quad Cities, which is right on the Iowa-Illinois border, about 3 hours west of Chicago. And just luckily for me, the guy who owned the team owned the Mobile Bay Bears, and he owned the Mobile Mystics, and he owned the hockey team up in the Quad Cities and some other places. And my wife and I had just gotten married and had been living up here our whole life, and we're kind of like, there's just got to be more to the Midwest. I grew up like in here, like in the middle of just farming country. Like I could watch my dog run away for 3 days here. Like it's just flat, so it's not like I grew up in Chicago. It's one of my favorite cities and I love to hang out there, but my wife and I were just like, hey, it's a big world, let's see what else is out there. And so they said, would you consider moving to Mobile? And luckily we were big Jimmy Buffett fans, so we'd kind of heard of Mobile a little bit, and we both loved to fish, and so it just kind of worked out. So we moved here. Really thought we'd live here or live there for 2 years. Kind of thought we'd keep going with the broadcasting career, and then like a lot of people, we just fell in love with the Mobile area and just said, you know what, we don't want to leave. We want to stay here. So we just kind of figured it out, and the rest is history. We absolutely love living in the South.
And as a sports enthusiast, so how does it work out that for 24 years, you've been basically the voice of high school football on television, you and Dan Brennan, and how did that come about?
So I had, so we used to do a lot of the Mystics games on TV. And so it was on Comcast, and back then they had a regional network, Comcast Sports Southeast. And so I did our games for there. I did some freelance work for them. I did some basketball for those guys. And then all of a sudden it was 1 week into the season, I think, and I can't remember what happened. Maybe Pat Greenwood tried to do the play-by-play and realized that not everybody can do play-by-play. Pat, you're really good at what you do. But no, but I think he tried to do it and thought he was going to be able to do their Friday Night Blitz or whatever it was. And like 1 week into it, they're like, hey, this isn't going to work. And so Russ Aaron, who was the producer of the show, called me and said, you want to do football? And I did a ton of football when I worked in radio up here. And I always loved high school football. And so I was like, yeah, let's give it a try. And it was Mary G at Mary G in Satsuma. Ron Lee, was he at Satsuma?
He was at Satsuma then, yes.
And Scott, really, he had
Scott
Mary
Leslie.
Jane. Yeah,
Scott
Scott Leslie.
Leslie.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was it. So that was our first game, and then I haven't missed in 24 years. I haven't missed a Friday, haven't missed a broadcast yet. So it just kind of worked out that way, and I always thought I'd be full time announcing and doing sports things, and I still kind of do with everything I do at the beach. But it's allowed me to keep my play by play chops fresh, and I really have loved it. And just the people I've got to meet and coaches, players, administrators. It's just people like you, Fred. I mean, it's amazing the friends that you make, even if you're not a coach. If you're just kind of in and around high school football, you make some amazing connections.
Well, and how long do you think it took before before high school coaches realized they could confide in you and you wouldn't spill the beans to anyone, that they could talk to you truly off the record and it would stay with y'all?
Yeah, because like when I was doing play by play up here for radio, I was it was just the one high school I would do it with. So I mean that coach became a really good friend of mine, and so he could just tell me anything. But down here, you got some fast talking Yankee beating him at midfield before the game, and they're like, "Who is this guy?" So it took a while. It really did, and some, and I would just guess that probably coaches when they were together, other coaches, and if anything ever came up about Dan and I, it kind of quickly got around. It's like, hey, they're pretty solid guys. They're not gonna, we're not. I always say we're not there to break news during the Friday night game. We're not there to talk about controversies, and we're not there to anything. We're here to talk about the game in front of us and the kids. But it took a few years, and then some coaches, some are just a little more standoffish, no matter what. I don't think it's a trust issue. I just think that's how they are. But I always laugh about this. For probably 6 or 7 years, we'd do a Saraland game, and Jeff Kelly was just standoffish on Friday nights to Dan and I, and we were like, man, we've never wronged this guy. Seems like a pretty good guy, and got to know Jeff a little more. And then I found out he's just grumpy on Fridays. That's it. And he'll tell you that. He's like, I'm just grumpy on Fridays until 7:00 when we kick the game off. Then I'm happy. He said, so it's not you. It's not. He's always kind of isolated. He goes down in the corner. He doesn't come up like you would see us, seek us out and that stuff. So it did take a while. And that's one thing that we do love, is the fact that coaches will tell us things that we could use in context during the broadcast without it sounding like we're giving away secrets or we're saying something we shouldn't.
Right. And I know one of the other issues when you first got going was, I know my principal, he was afraid it would affect the gate, and didn't want live television because people will stay at home, and it might cost us a couple $100. And it was 2005 before Davidson did a game, and that was a playoff game. Which obviously he let us do it because it was tape delayed. That's right.
And that's still the whole thinking behind. It's still the whole out of date, antiquated thinking of the Alabama High School Athletic Association, them not letting us do the games live. And I don't know all their inner working details, but some would probably connect the dots and say, well, they sure don't seem to mind during the regular season when they don't get part of the gate. And I think they get part of the gate in the playoffs. So maybe that's
the third, right?
Yeah. So what their thinking has been. But I mean, I would always make the comments on TV. I'd be like, look, here we're here at Blunt Viger or whatever. Look, it's live on TV and it's packed. We're at Theodore and Spanish Ford and Saraland. Look, Alabama High School Athletic. Nobody stayed home to watch it on TV, but all of the people who are watching it on TV, they weren't coming to the game anyway. They weren't coming to the game anyway. So why not allow us to be able to? We feel like we get to tell 2/3 of the story, and then we just get shut off in the when the playoffs come. So and TV and broadcasting has come a long way in 20 years, but there were people who just thought it would hurt the game. And hey, if it's a monsoon and it's raining like it is in Mobile when we're recording this, yeah, maybe some people would just stay home and watch us. But I always say, as spectacular as Brennan and I are, ain't nobody staying home to watch us instead of coming to the game. I mean, that's just not it.
Well, and folks don't, again, you do such a good job, and the couple of times that I've pinch hit for Dan, you don't realize how much talking is going on in your ear during the game, and how you have to focus and lock in, and they're telling you when you're about to go to a commercial, and what you're going to next, and you're going to the sideline reporter, and all this is being in your ear in the middle of a play. And just how there is a gift to being able to do that. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, and that's just never been something that's affected me when I'm doing play by play. And I really, when we have when the director sees something, or a producer sees something, and he's telling me, we're getting ready to go to the replay. He's telling me, hey, Jim, watch the lower left. You can see the ball get punched out there. And so sometimes I'm saying things that's going to happen that I didn't notice the first time, but it's because I got somebody in my ear who's watching that replay saying, hey, Jim, watch here, lower left of your screen. It's going to get popped out right here. And I'm always up for taking in more information while I'm doing it, as long as it's that. Sometimes somebody gets on there and wants to get chatty and they're talking about something else. I'm like, hey, don't talk to me unless it's about the broadcast. Like I can listen. I can hear out of this ear and listen. And I'm just trying to get us into the play, get to the replay so Dan can explain a little more and get it set up for the next one. And hopefully all that is helping me get to that point without over describing. We got pictures on TV, and I'm guilty of it a lot of times. Right. There's pictures there. You don't have to describe everything when you're doing TV play by play.
And you brought up the Satsuma Mary G game, being your first game with Ron Lee. One of my best Ron Lee stories. I was at Robertsdale at that time, and we were had Satsuma on the schedule, and so we're watching them on film, and it's the first team that I'd seen in my years at Robertsdale that I actually sort of giggled at a little bit. I mean, these guys, Satsuma is awful, and I mean, I'm like, we're going. We got us one tonight, boys. I mean, we're going to win this football game. Not with the players, with the other coaches.
Sure.
So Ron shows up with his team, and they're out walking the field on their end of the field, and we're walking in the field on our end, and me and Ron are chatting before the game. And he leans over and says, "Fred, you know what I see when I see your team on film?" I said, "What's that, buddy?" He said, "My team." And I'm thinking to myself, we're going to beat the dog out of y'all. And we beat them 21-20. So he had a much better grasp of where we were in the world at that point in time in Mobile than I certainly did.
Oh, but
it was exactly.
You got the win. You got, and looking at the schedule every year. I mean, both of you guys looking at the schedule, we're circling that one and be like, we're going to have us a chance on that Friday night, right?
Oh yeah, well, it was at least that was when you did your homecoming queen. I mean, if we played each other every year, we'd have crowned homecoming queens every year. That had been the case. No question. I mean, I saw a lot of homecoming queens at Robertsdale in 5 years. I mean, really did. I mean, some of them would have homecoming week 2. I mean, just go and get it out of the way.
Well, but then when you got to Davidson, there weren't a lot of homecoming games when you were, nobody scheduled the Warriors a lot for homecoming when you were there. That's for sure.
We usually saw one a year, and that was ours. It changed a little bit then, no doubt. Well, so as you look back on 24 years of doing it, what are some of the highlights for you? Some of the games that just stick out and you go, holy cow. I mean, what a football game that was back in the day.
There's, there's some games that stick out for reasons that are just crazy how they ended. I mean, Foley playing Daphne in Daphne one year, and Foley hadn't beaten Daphne. And and finally, Todd Watson was going to get that monkey off his back, and then it just something breaks down, crazy play, last second of the game, kid takes it 80 yards, whatever it was. I remember that was kind of a crazy ones. We used to do UMS playoff games, and there's some funny stories there. Coaches, one coach who came to me, I talked to him during the week. He was real helpful. And I went out and shook his hand before the game, and I met him down at the 20-yard line or whatever. And he's like, just immediately starts out, he's just like, just don't embarrass me. I worked really hard this week, but we're going to get beat by 60. So like, he's like, but just please try to be kind to my kids and me. And I'm like, well, thanks, Coach Rockney. Really, see, you got this one teed up for us here on TV. So that was funny. And so Brennan gets to the game, and you can just tell I've got something on my mind. And he's like, what? And I'm like, oh my God, this is over. Like this coach he's like, I got 2 kids suspended. He said, I got an assistant coach that's whatever. And it was just this line of things. But my most memorable game is not because of maybe the what happened on the field or those things, but again, going back to tape delay games in the playoffs, and we would follow UMS. I'd hustle up some UMS sponsors would get enough money together so they could pay us to do the games. And so we'd go with them on the road, and we did a game in Eufaula. And so we get there and kind of looking around, and it's like, anybody seen a production truck? Like big thing with like satellite on top? Like, anybody seen the truck? And we don't see our truck. And so found out like it had done a rodeo in Texas the night before or something like that. Something happened, broke down. So they literally get to the game at like 5:30, and they're just scrambling like crazy, trying to get the cameras up. Our crew gets there. They're there at 10 in the morning on a game day to get set up, running cable, all this stuff. Somehow they managed to get it. Get it all set up, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna have to record the pregame show at halftime. We're not gonna have time. We're just gonna come up cold right at 7:00, start the game." Like, okay, fine, we can do that. So we do that, and UMS comes out and does like an onside kick. They block a punt. It's just kind of a wild first half. Just kind of crazy things, very typical UMS playoff game type things happen like that. Okay, great. So we get to halftime, whatever the score is. So Dan and I run down the field. It's like, hey, Jim Cox, Dan Brennan, we're here, and you follow round 3 matchup, blah, blah, blah. And I'm talking to Dan. I'm like, so Dan, what do you think here tonight? And Brennan's like, he's like, it wouldn't surprise me if the Bulldogs, maybe block a punt in the first quarter, and then maybe they do an onside kick and they get it, and that defense, they've been forcing turnover. And I'm just like looking at him like, do you just want to script the whole thing out? Like, leave a few details there. And he just looked like the greatest analyst of all time, because they go back and show it in, and it all just played out right there. But Dan and I still laugh about that one, and I still just give him a little grief about that. I'm like, you might have oversold it a little bit on that one.
Yeah, I think the again, tape delay, one of the funniest things I've heard y'all comment on was when Prattville came and played us in the semis, and they brought the live lion. And Dan about lost his mind when the live lion rolled in the lion cage down there.
We were talking. Sometimes we just make things up. So we were making things up that the lion had a bit of had to relieve himself going down I-65, and somebody was behind him, and it got on the windshield, and we had all kinds of lion things that were going on. Those were just such great. Those playoff games were so great, and it's just the intensity is different, and it's just why we hate that we can't. I was so nice to Steve Savarese for 17 years asking for us. I was trying to use my best, catch more bees with honey, and I didn't go the vinegar route. All that, maybe a lot.
Well, and I do know that Steve subscribes to our network and watches every show. So if you want to make a toss to him to get to Alvin, here's your chance.
I think he kind of made his stance pretty clear as to what how it was going to go throughout all that. He wasn't real interested in making that reason happen for for whatever reason. I think he was at a game a few weeks ago. I thought I saw him walking down the sideline at a game on a Friday. I can't remember what it was, but I mean, there's not a lot of guys that look like Steve Savarese,
Right.
walking around.
Right.
I think he was at one of our games this year. Didn't pop up to say hi. Didn't come see Jen and Dan. Didn't pop up. None of that.
Well, and now I saw him actually about 2 weeks ago at me and Susan went and watched some neighborhood kids playing in the flag football championship in Fairhope down here at Barnwell, and we're walking to the game, walking over to the field to watch them, and like you, I mean, I see this guy walking away. I said, Susan, that's Steve Savarese. I mean, just by his gait, and I hadn't seen him in years, probably 6 years since I've seen him, and I said, Steve. He turned around and looked. Sure enough, it was him. So we had a good visit for 10 or 15 minutes, and thought he lives down toward Wolf Bay, over here in Baldwin County, and so did get to see him and visit with him, and I had just missed Beth, his wife, but we had a good football visit, and it was good to visit when it's not no pressure. We're not playing one another. He's not the boss of the athletic association, and I'm not trying to beg for something. It's a much easier way to go about visiting.
That's right.
Now tell us your wonderful background there. Where are you? You're not in Mobile. There's no fire going in Mobile, is there? I mean, where are you?
No, I'm in a little town called Polo, Illinois, and it was best. I think I sent you a video from Saturday when I was up. So their high school team, so small, they play 8-man football up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some of those Robertsdale teams you had felt like you only had 8 guys who could play out there, despite you had 11 on the field. Yeah, I'm in a little town called Polo, Illinois. It was from my family. My family's from about 15 minutes from here, so I'm up here dealing with some family stuff. I got in Friday, and I'm going back next Friday. But I was going to say the football team was in there. It was the semifinals of their playoffs. It was right here in town. The town has 1,800 people, I think, and this will not shock you, but it's like 2:00 on a Saturday. My brother and I go to the local sports bar here in town, and it's a cool little hometown bar, and the place is just packed. And I'm like, what? Why is it so packed? I mean, I don't think that many people knew I was going to be there because I draw a crowd. But and so then we figured out they had the game on, they had the live stream on. People had brought food, so it was like a watch party. And then when the game ended, then the bar was just full of both teams, parents, everybody. So it was just that high school. In Mobile, we don't always have that community feel for each individual school, whereas up here you have it like that. And two things. So the Polo, their nickname, they are the Polo. And guesses?
What do you think, Keith?
Horses.
Panthers.
The Polo Marcos.
Well, that's a good play on words.
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
Not to be outdone, there's a town about 15 minutes up the road here called Freeport, and there's lots of Freeports all over, but there is only one, Freeport Pretzels. The Pretzels.
This is like minor league baseball.
Yeah, way before it was like when they named them, they weren't doing it for like marketing shtick or anything like that. It was that was just that's what they went with, and it just stuck for them all.
Nope, and believe it or not, I have heard of Polo, Illinois. Not too far from what is it, Rochelle? Not too far from there.
Yeah, Rochelle. The Rochelle Hubs. They're the Rochelle Hubs. Hubs.
Mm-hmm. I remember. I think I ended up playing in a hockey tournament somewhere near there against them, and I always would take 88 straight west, go out to the Quad Cities. We'd go every year, go out to the John Deere Classic there. So,
yep,
familiar with kind of not too far from Dixon, if I'm not.
But no, that's where my dad's business was. That's 6 miles up the road, right here.
Perfect.
And if you've never been here, you'll never come. Dixon, the hometown of Ronald Reagan. That's where Ronald Reagan grew up. The Ron Dog right over there. Crazy. So off the top. So in this got to be early. I started working full time in radio when I was 19. So this is probably 1991. I went to Loyola Marymount University, did the sportscasters camp, which was a really cool thing. I actually got 4 credits at Loyola Marymount University. Al Michaels was one of our guest instructors. Bob Costas. I mean, it was legit thing, and it was really cool. We did tons of play-by-play and studio stuff. And the one year, our commencement speaker was Ronald Reagan. He came and spoke to us and told all of his stories about calling baseball in Iowa and all that stuff. So just kind of crazy that I'm out in Loyola Marymount and from the same hometown that he is. So I've totally hijacked the thread of this podcast here.
Oh no, I'd say, look,
Well, and I'm going to turn it over to Keith and Brian. I know they've got some questions for you, want to engage with you. So y'all have at it, guys.
Jim,
Brian, go for it.
Let me just ask one quick question. Outside of high school football, what's your favorite sports memory and what makes it so special for you? Is it professional or,
So I was lucky.
Big Chicago guy.
So I would say my favorite one personally was the hockey team I worked for here before I moved down there. Team called the Quad City Mallards. When we I was the first employee hired there, and in the Quad Cities, it was kind of like how Rush caught lightning in a bottle down in the Bayou. That's what hockey was in the Quad Cities. We played to 9,800 people every night, sold out, crazy, great fans, beautiful building. And that year, in our second year, we won the Colonial Cup. And, there's only 7, at that time, there was 7 professional hockey championships that got awarded. I mean, it was a big deal to win. And it doesn't matter what level you're at or whatever, a championship is still a championship. And so we won that game. We won game 6 on the road in Flint, double overtime, scored the goal. And the assistant coach is still probably my best friend today, my closest friend. He moved to Mobile with me. He was the head coach down here. I still have friends on that, that were on that team that played. So that's probably my favorite moment. When the Bears won the Super Bowl, I was 14, I guess at that time. So that was big. But I would say when the Hawks won the Cup in 2010, that's probably my biggest one. I mean, that was really cool. We were in the Florida Keys, and I had a whole bunch of people over the house we rented and watched that game against Philadelphia. And so when they won that Cup, because the Hawks were always my favorite team. When they won that Cup, that's probably my favorite moment, I would say, as a sports fan.
Yeah, that 2010 Cup, that was kind of that set the tone for a lot of things, and that ended a lot of years of misery. And for anyone who watched the early 90s teams going undefeated through the playoffs, sweeping everybody only to get swept by the Penguins.
I was at Chicago Stadium for Game 4 when the Penguins won it at the Old Barn. I was at that game, and seeing the cup presented was really, I mean, even though it wasn't the Hawks, but seeing the Stanley Cup get presented was really that was a cool one too.
That was a fantastic stadium. I had a lot of good memories in there, and well, you kind of stole my thunder. I was going to ask about the Hawks teams that you're now. And speaking of it, I don't know if you got to see yesterday's game, but that was quite a exciting game. It shows Connor Bedard is, for Coach and Brian, this, the term youth phenom and you can't miss on a kid is thrown around a lot, but this kid that the Blackhawks got with the number 1 overall pick is just absolutely, he's 18 years old and just playing like a seasoned veteran right now. He looks like he's 12 and
yeah, and I would say, Keith, you'll agree. So we just turned 18, maybe a month before the season started. But since this kid was 14, everybody in the hockey world knew this kid was unbelievably special. But the maturity that he has in front of a camera, speaking to reporters, speaking to anyone, and I don't think he could be the player that he is without that maturity. That's just, he is an amazing young man. For not just what he can do on the ice, but to be able to, he's 17 years old, and people are saying, you're you're going to be in the NHL and you're going to be one of the top 10 players in the NHL the first time you touch the ice. And you've been hearing that since he was this big. I mean, it's for kids to be able to keep that focus and stay true to who they are. I'm always amazed by that.
Yeah. Since he was 10 years old, everyone said this kid's different. And I love the story about how the scouts always talk about how good his wrist shot is and how accurate it is. And he told the story about how it happened where when he was real young, when he was playing Pee-wees, he broke his arm and it was right on a growth plate. So they told him, it's like, if you play and this gets any worse, you could have permanent, lifelong damages from it. So they cast it up. I mean, it was immobilized for months at a time. So rather than him and sit back and, kind of just work on little things, he went out and he just used one arm and just learned to shoot wrist shots with the one arm and just get more and more accurate. And like, he can go from both sides of the ice. He can go front hand, backhand. The little move, if you go on Twitter and see his first goal from yesterday, just, attacking, pressing deep in the zone, pickpockets a guy and puts in a shot in an angle that shouldn't be able to make, but he just puts it right over the goalie's shoulder into the short corner. And beautiful play. I mean, even the announcers, I think I was watching the bootleg feed I got was who was it? It was the Florida Panthers announcers, and even they were just like, I don't believe what we just saw. That was amazing.
Yeah,
but going into it, and so you're now okay. We got to ask, if you're a Chicago sports guy, of which side of the city do you watch baseball on?
Yeah, I'm a bleacher guy. I'm a Cubs guy.
Okay.
For sure. And it was when I was a really young kid. So my mom and dad used to let me call off school to watch opening day of the Cubs. And then I think because I got good grades when I was like in, grades 2, 3, and 4. And then like suddenly I didn't get that option anymore. I think the two were probably tied together. So I was a huge baseball fan growing up. And then I just kind of lost interest in baseball. And I don't know why. I didn't dislike it, and then I kind of picked it back up. And then, of course, when the Cubs started getting good again, it piqued my interest a little bit. And it was in 2014. I'm standing in our wine store, and my cell phone rings, and it's a 312 area code, Chicago area code. Who's calling me from Chicago? And it's this girl in the Cubs ticket office. She's like, "Hey, is this Jim Cox?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, you put your name on the season ticket holder waiting list." I don't remember doing it. I probably did it 15 years before that. Probably did it when I was a kid, just like, "Oh, I'll do it." And she's like, "And your name is up. And would you like tickets?" So my brother and I bought bleacher tickets, and we had 2 seats in the bleachers and had them through the World Series run and those things. So yeah, it was fun.
That's nice.
Yeah. So one other ticket, because you'll love this ticket thing. So this little radio station I worked at in Sterling, which was Dixon's big rival, we were a Chicago Bulls affiliate. So we would air all the Bulls games. And this was early 90s. So this is just when Jordan's really getting going. And I get a letter from the Bulls because I had to fill out all their affidavits or whatever. And they're like, "Hey, as a Bulls affiliate, you can buy Chicago Bulls playoff tickets. You can buy 4 tickets to the Bulls for the playoff games. But just like all playoff tickets, you have to pay for the whole run, and then you can get it, whatever." So I go to the crusty old general manager. I'm like, "Hey, do you want to buy these Bulls tickets?" He's like, "I'm not spending any money on Bulls tickets. What do you?" Just very dismissive. Just kicks me out of the office. And so I just get to thinking a little bit, and I'm a bit of an entrepreneur all the time. And so I call the football coach. I'm like, "Got a chance to buy these Bulls tickets. Should we buy them?" It's like, "I think we should buy them." So it turns out me and 3 other coaches bought them. It was, I want to say it was like maybe it was like $1,600 for the whole run total to do it. I'm making $10,500 working full time in radio. Like $400 is like, that's a big hit, So, so I needed some strength in numbers. So the first year of Jordan's championship, we do it, and this was before StubHub and anything else. And I scalped those tickets, and I met
good.
My wife and I's first down payment of our first house we bought in Sterling, Illinois. The down payment was the proceeds from my scalped Chicago Bulls playoff tickets. That was That was our house that we bought for $40,000. Our down payment came from scalping Bulls tickets.
I'll never forget during that
Good
run too. There
investment.
were people, like you said, scalping tickets. There were guys with season tickets. You could go, and this was before, obviously, pre 9/11 airport security was completely different, where you could go wait for people at the gate as their plane landed. And people would say, like, if you had extra tickets, go to O'Hare and go to the international terminal and just hit all the people coming in from overseas, and you could tell them, I want $1,500 per ticket, and they would hand it out to go see Michael Jordan play. And
Yep.
I used to scalping tickets outside the Chicago Stadium was always one of my favorite things to do, especially in the late 90s when I was in high school and going to Blackhawks games. We'd always, me and my couple buddies, we'd roll down there, crack a bottle of whiskey or something in the car when we got there, and just wait kind of closer to the game time. And we'd figure out who had the better tickets, and then we'd kind of wait to track them down about 5 minutes after the puck dropped. And always kind of say, like, hey, you still got those tickets? They go, oh, yeah, $75, come on in, right down by the glass. And we're like, well, the puck dropped 5 minutes ago, so we'll give you 20. And sometimes they do it, sometimes they wouldn't. If not, we'd sit. I've sat next to the glass. I've sat in the farthest seat you can imagine, even in the United Center, the top row. But yeah, so what got you into so up there, and so if you had to rank your Chicago teams, what do you pay attention to most?
So
Would you go Bears then Blackhawks?
Yeah, I mean my Sunday. So I'm not a I'm not like college football doesn't dominate my Saturday. I'll have it on. I'll watch it. I love to watch the big games, but it's like nothing. I'm not changing any plans around a college football game. I've just never up here. Like college football's not everything's NFL. So I just grew up.
Mm-hmm.
So my Bears Sundays they are my. I only get 17 of those. I haven't missed a down probably in 20 years. Like I drink it. I have a Guinness on tap. I tap my Guinness first one at 11:50 for the noon kickoff, so it settles right at noon. I drink Guinness all day on Bears Sundays. So yeah, my Bears games are it. And so I was telling before you jumped on. So I'm a big ESPN 1000 listener, which
every morning for me.
Didn't realize you are. So two weeks ago, I'm at SoFi. So I got.
I was too.
So my cousin has a friend who has a suite. So we were in the suite at SoFi, and then I had tickets in a suite for the Saints game. And I'm walking from the condo we rented with the four of us are walking to the game, and I'm in the condo getting ready, and I'm listening to the pregame show, and I hear this guy Keath from Mobile, Alabama calls in, and he's like, I was at SoFi last week, and I'm getting ready to go to the Superdome, and I'm like, the hell? I'm from down there. I was at SoFi. I'm at the Superdome. Who's this guy? Like, I'm the only one doing this. And so then I connected the dots right before this. I was like, oh, okay, well that's it. And I knew I was coming up. I flew up last Friday morning. Originally, I was going to fly up on Thursday, and I was going to go to the Bears-Panthers game. But then I was like, yeah, it's the Bears-Panthers. Wait, I don't have tickets in a suite, so I have to like buy a ticket. And then I have to like pay for beer, pay for food. It's 47 degrees out. It's like, I'll drink on my patio and come up on Friday morning. So that's what I did. But yeah, and the Hawks are so Bears and then Hawks. That's the pecking order for sure.
Yeah, SoFi Stadium was just an awesome experience. That was a top class facility there,
and it was 10x what I thought it was gonna be. So can you see this? So
the old school the B logo.
So when the Bears hired Matt Nagy, like me and like Sylvie on ESPN 1000 says, like, we thought we had a visor guy. Like we thought we had the cool coach who was and I've always been a visor guy. I fish a bunch, so a visor is my guy. So I go to it was Bears Cowboys game. It was a Thursday night that first year, or maybe it was Bears Seahawks. Anyway, so I get to Soldier Field and I'm like, I got to get that visor that Nagy's wearing. Like, I need that Bears visor. So I go to every merchandise stand in that dump of a field, Soldier Field, trying to find the visor. They don't have it there. What are you doing? So I go on the website the next day. It's no Bears visor for sale. They don't have the visor for sale. And I'm like, well, this is just ridiculous. So I figure out who Matt Nagy's assistant, who his secretary is. And I hack what her email address probably is. So I send her an email and I'm like, hey, tell her the whole story. I'm like, and I know he's a big wine drinker. I'm like, I'll trade Coach Nagy a bottle of really good Napa Cab for that visor. And she's like, oh man, Jim, you're such a great fan. Whatever. She's like, I'll just send you a visor. I'm like, no, that's not how I want to go. I'm like, I want to trade. Because the Bears just were inept. They didn't have them for sale. I'm like, I want to trade one. She's like, yeah, we have to get them printed just for him. So I got a big box of them here. I'll just send you one. I'm like, no. I'm like, I want to say it. So she's like, no. So she sends me the visor, and I sent him a super special bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet, and that's how
awesome.
Before they put them on sale, that's how I had that the first ever Bears visor. And now
that's a great story.
Yeah, that's.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the next move is after Soldier Field. So can't be worse.
It's just this is just why the Bears are just, and I love them, but they're so inept. So they play in the biggest media market in the NFL to only have one team. Chicago's the number 3 media market behind LA and New York. Both those places have 2 teams. Chicago has 1. The Bears should dominate it, and they play in the smallest stadium in the NFL. And it's just, from a fan experience standpoint, it's awful. You can't tailgate easily there. You can't take an Uber to have you drop you off in front of there. It's a pain in the ass to get to the game, to get out of the game. It's just maddening. It's just, being a Bears fan it's just maddening on so many levels.
The best parking experience I ever had at Soldier Field, and this was before they reconfigured Lakeshore Drive. So you'd have one direction going down one side of the stadium and the other side. Friend of ours gave us their season tickets, and my buddy's like, yeah, I got my friend's season tickets. I'll pick you up at 7:30. We'll head down. I'm like, okay, great. So I get in the car and we start driving down to the south side. I'm like, where are we going? He's like, well, my buddy said if we want a good parking spot, I got to go to this place and get these 2 sandwiches. And then when we're parking, we got to look for like a certain person. And so we roll up and there's the Chicago City Police waving everyone. And we'd say like, hey, we're looking for Officer so-and-so. And like, oh yeah, he's the next guy up. And we rolled up. We're like, excuse me, sir, we're supposed to tell you that we're using so-and-so season tickets, and I'm supposed to hand you this bag of sandwiches. He's like, oh, fantastic. You just park right here on the curb. I'll be standing here all day. So we literally just hopped the curb, parked on the grass right next to Soldier Field, and just like, all right, that's it. He goes, yep, appreciate it. Tell my friend thank you. I'll see him next week.
For a couple of footlongs.
Yeah, just a couple sandwiches and Chicago Police Department ethics. We're good to go.
Love it.
So, all right, well, let's get moving on a little bit. Jim, stick with us here, too, because there's plenty to talk about, and we'll get into a little more NFL talk as well, and we can laugh at the Packers together. But we'll start out with college football, looking back on the weekend. Brian, what you got from the ACC and the Pac-12?
I'm just going to be I'm just going to give you the games that mattered. FSU again played another close one with Miami, 27-20. It pulled it off. Clemson, 42-21. Tyler from Spartanburg should get another game ball for the second week in a row for firing up Dabo Swinney. Duke NC State Duke and North Carolina was a good game. Went to 2 overtimes. North Carolina prevailed 47-45. Arizona beat Colorado in the Pac-12 on a walk-off field goal. Washington extended their undefeated streak by a touchdown, beat Utah. And then USC lost to Oregon. Oregon looks like a beast, and that's one team I would not want to play right now in the Pac-12. So we're going to see Washington, Oregon for all the marbles if they can get a playoff berth. So, but that's all I got from the ACC. I mean, games of relevance. So.
All right, I'll go through the bigs real quick. I'll go through the bigs real quick, and then Coach can do the SEC. Big Ten, pretty much, Illinois gets back to 5-5. Northwestern upsets Wisconsin. They get to 5-5. But the real stories of the day were top of the chart there is for the Big Ten traditionalists and sickos. You had Iowa wins 22-0, which continues to hit on the under. But
They almost got the over by themselves, Keith, this week.
they
They get
almost
22
did.
points.
Almost
It's awesome.
did. But then you look at, Ohio State did what they had to do against Michigan State. That was never much of a competition. And then you have the whole Michigan-Penn State situation. Penn State, biggest game of the year for them to show that they are indeed a legitimate contender, and they once again failed at that opportunity. The Michigan, the whole Harbaugh thing, on the field or not, that team was ready and fired up. They weren't going to lose that game. I don't think. Going forward, we can talk more about it, but this whole situation is starting to get a little goofy. But the real thing that matters is it's going to be hopefully Michigan and Ohio State both undefeated at the Big House in a couple weeks. In the Big 12, things are really getting fun. This might be my watch for the rest of the season. Texas squeaks by TCU to stay top of the Big 12. And then after that, UCF, Oklahoma State had this thing in the bag, and UCF just dominates them. It was 45-3, just unbelievable. And then Kansas, who last week I just said, Oklahoma State and Kansas just can't look too far ahead. And what did they both do? They looked ahead, and they both ended up losing. So to put it in perspective for you, you have Texas at the top of the Big 12. And then you have, let me pull this up here, make sure I got it right. You have Oklahoma, 4 teams at 5-2 that could possibly still get into that Big 12 championship game. And depending on how that goes, and for the record, those teams are Oklahoma, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. Any more slip-ups or any more upsets, and things could get a little more interesting. And if Texas slips up, look, we could be seeing the Big 12 play their way out of the college football playoff at this point. So we'll see from there. Coach, why don't you go ahead?
SEC, of course, the 2 games that I missed in my picks were just crushing defeats. I can't believe Tennessee went up there and laid an egg at Missouri. That would be a much closer game. And then Auburn goes to Arkansas, and I'm getting out that creates just enough excitement for the Auburn people. They actually start thinking they can beat Alabama in a couple of weeks. And but for them to put the whipping on Arkansas the way they did, and then Jimbo Fisher and the Mississippi State coach get fired.
What was the last, Coach? When was the last time that? Can you remember that happened where 2 teams play each other and both coaches get fired within 48 hours?
I can't recall it happening.
It hasn't happened in over 20-some years. I read on Twitter this morning.
Wow.
So
just
pretty amazing. But Jimbo's really not going to be hurting.
Alabama's really good. Georgia is really, really, really good. They've got all their guys back, and they are a really good football team. They are hard to handle. And Jaden Daniels, I think Jaden Daniels, if I had a vote for the Heisman, I would vote Jaden Daniels, the LSU quarterback. He is just unbelievable. And by the way, Jim, we had this conversation about the Michigan quarterback a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I made the comment just laughingly that if I can time travel from 1980 and 81 to right now, I could be the quarterback at Michigan and be a Heisman contender. And then to prove that out, I think he was 6 for 7 this weekend and did not throw a pass the second half. I could have played and not thrown a pass in the second half. So they keep making my point for me there on that one.
Is that a little Harbaugh saying, you know what? We're going to send a message. We don't even need to throw the ball.
They were the number 2 defense in the country, and they ran 40 straight. Besides one pass that was called a pass interference, so it didn't apply. So ran 40 straight runs to end the game. The first non-service academy since 1982 to not throw a pass and win a game. So just physically dominated them at the line of scrimmage.
And I cover South Alabama, and South Alabama got a big win over Arkansas State. And
Coach,
happy
the
for
SEC's got their SEC's got their gauntlet this week of big teams that they play, with the exception of Georgia, Tennessee, I think, too. And they just released the point spread. I just saw it. Georgia would be a 4-point favorite against Alabama in the SEC championship game. So just read that.
Yeah,
Very good. So that's my SEC and South Alabama update.
All right. Let's go in. Tomorrow we have the big announcement of who is the college football top 4. Just to run down, after last week, it was Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, and Florida State were the top 4, followed by Washington, Oregon, Texas, Alabama. In my opinion, nobody lost. No one really got any. Michigan might have got a little more style points with that quality win. But there's some talk about Florida State dropping down and Washington jumping up because of the close game against Miami. I think it should stay how it is. You're here until you're not, and Washington is, they got to. Pac-12's got to show out because they're not as strong. And Coach, like you said a couple weeks ago, until one of those teams ever shows they can come into the SEC or play a powerhouse Big Ten team, or Big Two in reality, the Pac-12 is always, I think, going to be a little underrated.
Georgia with 2
overlooked.
top 15 wins, though, could pass Ohio State this week. 2 top 15 wins back-to-back weeks, and pretty impressively. Could pass them for the number 1. That wouldn't shock me.
I wouldn't drop Florida. You might reshuffle the top 4, but I wouldn't drop anybody out at this moment. Coach, any thought?
I'm with you. I mean, I've never been one to shuffle just to shuffle. I mean, in my mind, Georgia was always number 1. And I mean, how many games you got to win in a row to not be number 1? I mean, good grief.
2 years.
I mean, what? And my other question would have been, if Washington would have lost. Let's say Washington loses, and then 5, 6, 7, and 8 all have 1 loss. And the rationale right now for Texas to be ahead of Alabama is that Texas beat Alabama. So does Washington stay ahead of Oregon, even though they lost because they beat Oregon head-to-head, or because if they lost later in the year, you wiggle them down? I mean, how do you view that? What are they? Do they go? Is it head-to-head in some cases and eyeball test in other cases? I mean, how does that play itself out right there?
They could have problems. They've got a bunch of 1-loss teams. They could have problems. We'll see.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll go back, leave that alone then, and we'll see how it comes out tomorrow. We'll go back to it on Friday. But going around the NFL, we have 1 game left to go tonight with the Broncos traveling to Buffalo, and that game's about to kick off in about 15 minutes. There's around the NFL, the one big shock that I think everyone needs to be talking about is how well C.J. Stroud has played it in Texas, down at Houston. He has shown almost, now granted, rookie season, a lot going on, but he's kind of taken that Ohio State quarterback stigma and kind of told everyone where they can stick that.
He go and you, Coach, better than it, but he just looks like he's got that it thing for a quarterback.
Yeah, he does.
It just looks like he's got it.
Yep, he doesn't ever look. He'll throw a pick and come back the next series and be fine. I can remember when Joe Namath was playing for the Jets, he threw 6 interceptions and a half. He didn't blink. Yeah. He was Joe Willie the second half too. I mean, and some guys just can do that, and other guys just find a hole to crawl in. Yep. And he just has that. There's no doubt.
And I would say one other thing to touch on is the Dolphins are 6-3. All that firepower, that high-scoring offense, Tua, the receivers, everything there. They're still being competitive here. They were off this week, but Dolphins 6-3. Steelers 6-3 now. Steelers haven't outgained their opponent yardage all season, I don't think. But Mike Tomlin, let me tell you, he knows how to coach a football team and knows how to prepare, get ready for a game, and knows how to work that game and adjust. That guy is so much fun to watch in Pittsburgh, and he holds every one of those players accountable. That is the understatement there. I'd love to have someone like that in Chicago right now. So,
or him.
but
We'd love to have just him.
or just have Mike Tomlin in Chicago. Yeah, why not? That'd be even better. So,
and I've been kind of thinking about this too. That Dolphins offense. I mean, it was hard not to just be blown away by him, but I kind of had that thought about, okay, so as things gets colder, you're playing on the road and later in the year, and also you don't have that tremendous. I mean, it's still tough to go play in Miami to adjust from a climate standpoint, but it's not like it is in September and October from a heat and humidity standpoint. So I think they lose a little of that home field advantage later in the year. But I'm just, the winds are whipping around. It's cold. Tua, let's be honest. I mean, Tua is not exactly. He's like me. He's not a good cold weather climate person. He doesn't. I don't think he likes the cold all that much either. So I think that could be that also could affect their offense here in the second half of the season.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think that about does. Anyone else got anything they want to jump in with?
I want to do one shout out because Jim being the high school football guy, the Jim, did you know that of course UMS Wright beat Clay County Central on the other night 7-0. The two winningest coaches in Alabama high school history coaching against one another. I think one had 358 wins and the other one had 354 wins, something like that. And UMS Wright beats Clay County Central on the road 7-0. They had 69 yards of offense and won the game.
Wow.
And again, but just to recognize, like you're talking about Tomlin, it's hard as an offensive head coach play caller to say, you know what? I don't care how many yards we gain or don't gain as long as we win the game. I will pump the ball. I will not let my ego get involved in this and go for it on fourth down, backed up, or some crazy stuff because I can't stand to keep pumping the ball. I mean, you go win a game against somebody you shouldn't beat, and you have less than 70 yards of offense, and you still win the game.
And their punter had a great night. I mean, he had a great night. Kicked the ball super well. And how about, I don't know if you heard, I read it in I think maybe it was the Call News, Danny Horn's comments after the game. He said, so I know their top running back was out. I think he broke his leg. And Danny Horn, just said, look, we got out-coached. We got outplayed. This is, all the credit to them. And he said, whatever the kid's name was, he said, if he was playing tonight, he said, I don't think it would have mattered. We couldn't block him. We couldn't block them on that. So all the credit to them, whatever. And it's just like, he wasn't throwing his kids under the bus, but he was just
sure.
Because I mean, good grief. I mean, you look at every time UMS comes off the bus, they lose the eye test. I mean,
no doubt.
And this year, I mean, there's just not a ton on that team this year.
Right.
And
they made the playoffs because Viger plays an ineligible player, or they don't even get in.
Right.
I mean, they're a 5 seed, so I mean, they were what they were, but they found a way to go win the game. And also, Mary Montgomery winning their first playoff game in school history here in Mobile to go now 11-0. They got a tough row with Enterprise coming to town next week, but first undefeated team in history, first playoff win in school history. That's a long way from. I interviewed for the head coaching job at Mary Montgomery in 1989, and I went out to the school, and the stadium had been condemned, and the principal told me, young man, you don't want this job. And he wouldn't even interview me. That's a long way.
Did you say thank you, sir? Like, were you like, thank you, sir?
Yeah, I had been coaching in college. He looked at my resume and said, young man, you don't want this job. I wouldn't do that.
She's honest with you.
Do something else. Oh,
that's great. Hey, Jim, when you get back to town, hit me up. We'll watch a game together and either cry into a nice glass or celebrate one way or another. It'll be a good time.
We'll do it. And now that I'm not quite as mad at somebody else going to SoFi and the Saints game in back to back weeks. I thought I was the only.
Look, the only thing I could do is not go to Chicago for this game because Bajan starts his first game, we win. I go to the next two, we lose, and then I skip a game and we win. So clearly, it's just we need to stop going.
Clearly, on
Stay
you.
away.
Yeah. So anyway, well, that'll wrap it up for us today on Monday, November the 13th. Hope you all enjoyed it, and thanks for sticking with us. Remember to go see our friends at Run and Try on Hillcrest, and as well as like, follow, subscribe, and interact with us on all the social media networks. So to wrap this up, I'm Keith for Coach Brian and our good guest, Jim Cox. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bear down.
Bear down.